The city outside his small apartment window had quieted to a soft, distant hum. Streetlights glowed like lonely stars, and the occasional car slid past on the wet road below. Most people were asleep, wrapped in dreams or silence. Daniel never slept at that hour. Insomnia had become a quiet companion. Since the day everything in his life had fallen apart, his laptop screen cast a pale blue light across his tired face. The room smelled faintly of old coffee, and rain drifting in through the cracked window. His eyes burned from staring at the screen for too long, but he kept scrolling anyway. Messages, videos, news, anything, to keep his mind from wandering to memories he couldn't escape. Memories of Emily. 6 months had passed since the accident, but the emptiness still felt raw and fresh. Emily had been his world, the one person who made the chaos of life feel simple. Now every room felt larger and colder without her. Daniel rubbed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. The clock on the wall ticked quietly. 2:11 a.m. A notification appeared on his screen. It was strange. The message didn't come from any platform he recognized. No username, no profile picture, just a single line. "You should watch this." Below it was a link. Daniel frowned. Normally he ignored strange messages, but something about this one made him pause. Maybe it was the silence of the night. Maybe it was the loneliness pressing against his chest. Or maybe it was the small detail that made his heart skip. The timestamp on the message read 2:11 a.m., exactly the same time showing on his clock. He hesitated for a long moment, his finger resting on the mouse. Then he clicked. The video opened instantly. At first it was just static and darkness, a shaky camera adjusting to the light. Then the image focused. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. It was Emily. She sat in what looked like a park, sunlight falling through the leaves behind her. The breeze gently moved strands of her brown hair. She wore the soft blue sweater he had given her on her birthday. She looked alive, real. Daniel leaned forward, his heart pounding. "No, that's impossible," he whispered. The video had been uploaded recently. "Yesterday," Emily smiled at the camera. "Hi, Daniel." His chest tightened. Her voice was exactly the same. Warm, soft, slightly teasing. "If you're watching this, it means something strange probably happened. Maybe you got a message. Maybe you're confused." Daniel's hands trembled. How is this possible?" Emily continued speaking, unaware of the storm erupting inside him. "I made this video a long time ago," she said gently. "Actually, about a year before the accident." Daniel froze. She tilted her head slightly, the way she always did when she was about to say something serious. "You remember how I always worried too much about the future?" Daniel let out a broken laugh. "Yeah," he whispered. Emily nodded in the video. "Well, this is one of those times." She looked down. "For a moment before meeting the camera again. If something ever happened to me, I didn't want you to stay stuck." Daniel's throat tightened. "I know you, Daniel. You feel things deeply. And when you lose something, you hold on to the pain like it's the only way to honor it." A tear slipped down his cheek. Emily smiled softly. "But that's not love." Daniel shook his head slowly. "What are you talking about?" The video continued. "I asked my friend Marcus to send you this if I couldn't be there anymore." Daniel's mind raced. Marcus, her old college friend. He hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. Emily leaned closer to the camera. "If you're watching this, it means you're probably awake in the middle of the night again." Daniel let out a quiet breath. "You always stayed up too late." For the first time in months, a faint smile touched his lips. Emily reached toward the camera as if trying to touch him. "I need you to listen to me carefully." Her eyes grew serious. "You're still alive." Daniel swallowed hard. "That means your story isn't over." The words settled heavily in the quiet room. "You're going to feel like life ended when I left," Emily said softly. "But it didn't. It changed." Daniel closed his eyes. "I don't want change," he whispered. The video continued. "I know you're hurting, and I know you probably think moving forward means leaving me behind." Emily shook her head gently. "But it doesn't." The wind rustled through the trees behind her. Love doesn't disappear when someone is gone. It becomes something else. Daniel wiped his face, unable to stop the tears now. Emily smiled again, but there was sadness in it. "You remember the cafe we loved? The one with the little yellow lights?" Daniel nodded instinctively. "Go there tomorrow." He frowned. Tomorrow? Emily laughed softly. Yes, tomorrow. She looked straight into the camera. There's someone you need to meet. Daniel stared at the screen. What? Emily leaned back, sunlight bright around her. Life has a funny way of continuing even when we think it can't. She hesitated before speaking again. And Daniel, if you're still blaming yourself for the accident, his chest tightened. Stop. Her voice was firm now. That night was not your fault. Daniel covered his face. For 6 months he had replayed that night in his mind. The rain, the sudden headlights, the sound of metal. He had been driving. The guilt had been eating him alive. Emily's voice softened again. You loved me. That was never in question. Daniel slowly looked up at the screen. Emily smiled warmly. And I loved you more than anything. Silence filled the video for a moment. Then she said quietly, but love doesn't mean stopping your life when mine ended. Daniel felt something shift inside him. A tiny crack in the wall he had built around himself. Emily glanced behind the camera as if someone had called her name. I guess this is goodbye. At least in this weird recorded way. She laughed. Softly, but not really goodbye. She leaned closer again. It's just... See you later. Daniel whispered her name. Emily's eyes softened. One more thing. She held up a small folded piece of paper. I left something for you at the cafe. Daniel blinked. What? Emily winked. You always loved surprises. Then the video ended. The screen went black. Daniel sat there in silence, the glow of the laptop reflecting in his wet eyes. The clock ticked quietly. 2:26 a.m. For a long time, he didn't move. Then slowly, he leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. His chest still hurt. Emily was still gone, but something had changed. For the first time in months, the darkness didn't feel endless. Morning came with soft grey light spilling into the apartment. Daniel hadn't slept, but he didn't feel exhausted. He showered, shaved, and put on a clean shirt. Simple things he hadn't cared about in a long time. By noon, he stood outside the cafe. The little yellow lights were still hanging in the window, exactly the same. His heart pounded as he pushed the door open. The familiar smell of coffee and warm bread filled the air. He stepped inside slowly. A young woman stood behind the counter. She looked up. Her eyes widened slightly. You must be Daniel. He froze. How do you know my name? She smiled gently. Emily told me about you. Daniel felt his chest tighten again. You knew Emily? The woman nodded. She used to come here a lot before. She paused softly. Before the accident, Daniel swallowed. The woman reached under the counter and pulled out a small envelope. She asked me to give you this if you ever came. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a photo. It showed Daniel and Emily sitting at this very cafe, laughing about something he couldn't remember. On the back of the photo were a few handwritten words. Live enough for both of us. Daniel stood there quietly. The pain was still there, but so was something new, hope. He looked around the cafe, noticing the sunlight, the quiet conversations, the sound of coffee being poured, life moving forward. For the first time in months, Daniel allowed himself to breathe fully, and somewhere deep inside he felt Emily smiling.